Recognizing Remembrance Day here in our country is a way to honor all of those who fought and died for our freedoms. BCN's Heidi Echavarria was at the Bomber Command Museum of Canada in Nanton, Alberta, to learn more about the brave battles our heroes fought in the air.
While many countries and their people were being killed by dictatorial governments, thousands of men sacrificed their life for peace and freedom. Among these brave men, the brilliant participation of the Canadian military and the Royal Canadian Air Force bomber crew must be recognized. Carol Gasgard, curator at the Bomber Command Museum of Canada in Nanton, Alberta, explains what is so important to have the historic place of the interest not only in Canada, but around the world.
It's important because the sacrifice is so huge. Out of 100 bomber crews that started out to do 30 combat trips, only 25% finished their 30 combat trips. 75% did not finish. So on our giant Bomber Command Memorial Wall out there are 10,800 plus names of the young Canadians that were killed in bombers. That's why we're here. Some 400 Lancasters were made in Canada and then flown to England to help with the war effort. As the war progressed, the Allies knew they needed 4-engine bombers, and so they manufactured the Halifaxes and the Lancasters and to some extent the Sterling bombers. And these were the heavy bombers that they used to pound the Nazi Empire into submission. You needed those long-distance bombers to destroy the factories and the supply networks, and that's why the two main bombers, I would say, for Canadian Bomber Command history are the Halifax and the Lancaster.
Canada not only played a huge role in the creation of hundreds of the Lancaster used in the World War II, but was the #1 nation in training more than 131,000 airmen.
Canada trained all the guys to fly in bombers in Canada, where no one was shooting at them. Pilots, navigators, to fly airplanes. We trained 131,000. The #2 nation called Australia. They trained 30,000. The British don't talk about it, the Americans don't talk about it, and the Canadians don't know. And the Canadians, for the years 1942, 43, and 44, did not fly the Lancaster. The Canadian squadrons flew the Halifax. That's why we're putting together a Halifax at the Bomber Command Museum.
The Bomber Command Museum of Canada is open to the public on Saturdays and Sundays.
So here at Bomber Command Museum of Canada, which is a national memorial, we have the 10,800 names of the Canadians killed in bombers in World War II. Not only do we have their names, we have each individual man's story here. So when families come to us, and I had an uncle in World War II in bombers, we can tell them the whole story of their uncle.
Without those places or people who tell us or remind us of what humanity has been through, the history we know today would be forgotten. That is why places like the Bomber Command Museum of Canada in Nanton, Alberta, can be considered a human and historical bastion with which we reinforce a slogan like, "Lest we forget."
Canadians and British fly their bombers at night, so paint them black. Daytime is American job, nighttime is British and Canadian job. He's the guy that sits in the nose, and the pilot is helping him get to the target, and he's saying, left, left, steady, steady, right. You know, they want to get right dead on, and when they're right over the target, bomb's gone.
Not much is said about female participation during the Second World War. Carol Gasgard says that although women's liberation had not yet arrived, women were also key to the fight for freedom.
17,000 women were in the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II. They're called Women's Division Royal Canadian Air Force. And they did all the jobs at the Air Force, mechanics, vehicle drivers, office work, weathermen. They were the weather people. They would do the jobs that the men would normally do. So what could the men do? They could go fight. This is before women's lib. Some of them went to England, but the majority were in Canada running the Air Force.
This memorial museum has one of only 4 running Lancaster in the world. The museum is also working on the reconstruction of the Halifax and also has other planes and vehicles used before and during the World War II. The Bomber Command Museum of Canada also has many true stories to tell about the Second World War and its protagonists. Over 10,800 Royal Canadian Air Force bomber aircrew with an average of 23 years of age died during the Second World War, fighting for our freedom. As many say, freedom is not free. From the Bomber Command Museum of Canada, for Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
Thanks so much, Heidi.